Hi, I'm Landscaper. This is the Wannabe Composer series. Oh, coffee this morning. Weird, huh? It should keep me awake. As you may hear, I have a slightly runny nose and a cough and a cold. Mostly thanks to my son. I can't really blame him. Let's blame nursery instead. Yeah, why not? Either which way. I'm a bit groggy, so, it is what it is. Anyway, I wanted to share with you this morning, or it might be this afternoon, who knows what time zone you're in. The D&D spreadsheet that I've started. So we went back and forth with some of the ideas, some of the test examples, and they're getting a pretty good green light now. So that's great. So I'm going to persevere with those. The next kind of stage is to actually test them in a campaign, so in a real life situation, see if they actually work. So before going too far down that line, I needed to kind of get my head in organised mode as to how I'm going to catalogue these things. So I've started this little Google sheet, that's a little spreadsheet, and my idea being is that we're going to turn these eventually into packs. So we're working on the premise that you pick a kind of setting. So in this instance, I've started with kind of like towns. At the moment in my head, I was working on kind of like deserted towns and stuff like that. And then you want kind of vibrant towns. And I just thought there's going to be lots of different types. You might want to do different styles of kind of almost like nationality potentially. But anyway, whatever. I'm going to get stuck into that. It's very exciting. Get stuck into that later on. But so what I've done is I put together this spreadsheet to show that, so towns will be my overall initial pack idea, and within that I would like sort of 10 versions, for example, of different town styles. And so with that, what I've done is I've written the main body atmosphere first, because I find that's the one that I really get into. Then from the atmosphere, this one, the initial one, I'll run through in a minute. It's called sort of semi-deserted. Kind of self-explanatory really, but there you go. And that I've written, it's a 6-minute piece that loops nicely, so you can just loop around and around. And then this stuff's just for me really over here. Have I created the music? Have I actually mixed it? Is it ready to go? Is it ready to trial? So then I've come down here and I've just started the intro. So I'm labelling these the same, obviously, to keep my brain in check, and I'm doing a little colour coding because that helps me as a ready reckoner. But then when I thought, actually, when you end a campaign, there's multiple ways that campaign could have gone. So it may have gone positively, hooray. It might have gone just as a part, and you're going to carry on with that campaign again next session, whatever. Or it might go negatively. Yes, you died. Blown up. Cast into oblivion. Whatever. Who knows, right? So I thought, so I'd do a negative. So I figured actually for each set that I will do, in this instance, towns semi-deserted, I'll give it 3 possible outros. That the DM can have at their disposal. So what I thought I'd do today is just run you through some of the audio that I've done. I won't go into too much as to how I've done it. You've probably seen how I've already made some of these before, so that's not news. And then I'm going to work through some other different areas, different kind of settings. That's the word I'm looking for. I had sessions in my head and I'm like, it's definitely not sessions, settings. So yeah, so we're going to want some battles, some caves. I'm going to do some character themes as well. Water, rivers, at sea. I'm not sure at sea actually features much. Anyway, I was just kind of spitballing and chucking everything in. No idea, it's a bad idea until you have a bad idea. And monsters, maybe monster themes as well. Different sort of character NPC character themes too. So that's just a reminder for me, but I'm going to start to flesh this out as I start to make these. something that did kind of come to mind as I'm doing it is the sheer volume of work and how long it takes to put these together. It's quite extensive, so I need to work quite hard and quite fast. And I've got another commission that I really need to start very soon, as the time is kind of ticking on that one. Anyway, you don't need to know all this. This is just my life. It's boring. I mean, it's not for me, but you know. So I just wanted to quickly share with you my file structure. This is just how I do it. Anyone can organise their files however they want. Of course you can. But I thought my brain needs kind of structure because I forget so much. And when you've got a lot of different projects going on, it's really difficult to think, oh, where did I leave that? Where was that? Where was that track? So what I've begun to do, I've got my initial thing. So, you know, I set up the Keybase project. I've got my D&D, it was 25 when we started. And I'd stuck in the initial briefs, little bits that I was doing, test examples, etc. But now I want to start fleshing it out for the future packs. So what I've done is I thought I'm going to start with my settings. I may wind up changing this later on down the line if it doesn't pan out. But so towns is the one I'm working on at the moment. And then I've broken it down to intros, main atmospheres, and outros. So you can now see within my intros, I've got towns number 1, towns number 2. This will carry on. And then main atmosphere, exactly the same, right? I put a little MA in there just to remind me what it is in case I get lost. But this is how I plan to kind of progress all of them. Then I've got my outros, the negatives, the neutrals, right, and so on and so forth. And this just gives me a little bit of structure that I think I'm going to need moving forward, because it's fine once you just got a few pieces out there. Once you've got 50 packs written, that's a lot of tracks and a lot of data that could easily be confusing if you don't label it properly. So this folder structure will kind of complement. That doesn't work. This folder structure will go along with my spreadsheet, and in my spreadsheet I've got the locations of all the tracks should I need them. But hopefully this organisational process will take a lot of that pressure off my brain of having to remember where stuff is. So I thought that might be useful. Right, anyway. You did half go on a bit, didn't you? Yes, I do. Right, I'll put a pause in there and then I'm going to show you through some of these tracks. Okay, so this daintily coloured little track is my Towns Intro 1. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you may recognise some of the sounds in these, but if not, no matter. It don't matter. We'll go through them anyway. So, at the top here, I've got a contact. It's kind of like a bell, an anvil, a clock kind of sound. Sounds very mechanical, and it's got that it's got this kind of like aftertone bit in it, which I really like. Organic sounds are really good for this kind of thing, I think. I mean, another thing that we're going to do with these guys is put in atmospheres as well, right? So for some of these towns, I want to keep the parts separate so that they can choose to use them or not. But I want to create like a kind of, medieval or whatever town sound, that could just run behind for a bit more atmosphere. Anyway, so I like that kind of organic sound. So I think it's probably quite quiet for you, isn't it? I'm rubbish at setting levels. That might be a bit better. Okay, so we've got that. We've got, excuse me, always burping. We've got the BBC Spitfire Orchestra cello, but I've put a bit of a twist. I've just added some reverb to it, right? I've done some fantastic things with it. I haven't. But anyway, it sounds more like this now. So because in my head, I need a bit of a vision as to why am I making these sounds, what am I doing? I've pictured a semi-deserted town. I thought, I kind of want a ghostly, ethereal kind of effect to sit on these. So sending it backwards and into space a little bit with the Valhalla reverb just kind of achieves that purpose, right? It just sort of makes it a bit more ethereal, a bit more ghostly. But you've still got the richness of the cello, the kind of... I love the cello, kind of mournful, sort of longing, kind of warm sound. I love it. Right. Next, I've got damaged drums. They've got a whole different... Not at all what I really wanted. I just needed something nice and subtle. Almost like, again, if you watch another one of my videos, it's almost like I kind of just want more kind of natural instruments doing certain things. So whilst I'm happy to use almost Stranger Things kind of style synths, the drums and all that kind of stuff, I want to feel a bit more earthy. Because I was toying with putting in some of the bigger for these, and I'm like, really, the only time I would kind of consider using those is for battle sequences, fight sequences, or something that really, really needs a sort of trepidation or kind of something up, because I don't want to push too much into the listener's ear while they should be focusing on the DM, right? I want to kind of complement the DM's introduction to the campaign. I'm having trouble speaking today, I don't know why. Cold, who knows. So after that, I've got a little bass. Kind of essence of... I know it's a kind of record crackle, but in my head I kind of sort of thought, that sounds a little bit like something might be on fire, and I thought I kind of like that. So we'll have that running underneath. Then I've got my classic solo violin. Again, I've kind of thrown this, made it a little more ethereal. Okay, so that's the solo violin. Then I've got some horns I'm using from, I think it's East West. Go away. Right. Yeah. It's quite an old plugin, quite an old synth these days, but I still really enjoy it. I think some of the different styles and the fact that you can use your left hand to activate the different trigger keys for the different styles, really like that about East West. Anyway, so I've got some horns, but what I've done is I've kind of spaced them out and tried to make them sound a little bit more almost digital synth kind of thing. So you've got the undertone of that horn, but a kind of almost electrical synth sound in the reverb there, which again I think is ethereal, a little ghostly, or haunting should I say. And then I've got some trumpets, again similar principle. I've set these up more for effect. Alright, let's get that beautiful long into the sound, and then the rasp or the trill or whatever it is. It's not a trill, it's something else. I can't remember names. Right. Which I just think, sets a bit of kind of mystery, a bit of adventure. I've done a little bit of automation fade in, as you can see here, and a little bit of automation fade out for almost all of these, because I think if these are intro parts, you're just going to want to kick them off, discuss the upcoming campaign, what's happening, blah, 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 and then fade out nicely before going into the atmosphere music. And then this again, this track has come from the atmosphere one that I've written, so really all the parts should be the same. Doesn't mean you've got to use all of the instruments or whatever. Like I said, I leave the damage out sometimes, leave the drums out sometimes, but I want that kind of consistency across the campaign for now. Again, I got to consider if there's going to be a battle in a campaign, do I actually want to do a battle piece for the same style? I don't know how uniform I'm going to want to be. Again, it will depend on, if you're a bit of an audio snob, the chances are you're going to want things in either the same key or at least complementary key, so that it's not jarring, it's not super out of place. All of a sudden a battle happens and it sounds like it's in space, a sci-fi battle or something when you've just been playing folk music. To me that would kind of jar, right? So it's something I'm going to need to consider as we go further into this project, whether I actually tack on all the different setting possibilities, which again is going to be extensive and a lot of work, which I'm looking forward to, but it will be time consuming. Anyway, I've waffled for 20 minutes now, haven't I? So here we go. Let's have a quick listen to this first intro. So there you go. Around the kind of, we're aiming between 40 seconds and a minute for the intro, but I figure a nice long fade out should give plenty of time for the DM to set up the next bit. Right. Sorry, my nose is tingling. So none of these have been mixed yet. I figure the creation is probably the more important bit. Because the mixing will take time, I want to kind of get these across to the guys first to see if they think, yeah, this will work, and if it will work in principle, then I'll mix it. It's a delicate balance, right? Because you don't want to send something that you can hear what it's going to sound like when you've mixed it. It'll sound fine, because it's quite muffled, it's quite bass heavy. At the moment, there's far too much mud in it. I mean, at the moment I've got a cold, so I can't really mix anyway because my ears are shot. But you've got to have that fine line. So I've done, semi-mixing. You can see all the little plugins I've got. I've done semi-mixing with this track before to try and make it passable. But I'm not going to spend too much time doing a kind of final mix and output. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this is the main atmospheric bit. All the same synth sounds in there. The plan being to just provide a little backdrop, audio backdrop, that will loop comfortably. And as I mentioned before, in my head, I've got a semi-deserted town. So I've got the same synths running through. I've got the kind of bell, clockworky bell, the cello, the drums, the bass, the violin, the horns, the trumpets, with their weird ethereal stuff going on. I'm not going to play the whole thing because I think it runs for like 6 minutes. So I'm going to play a quick bit of the intro. So when I mix this, I might bring the cello up a little bit because that kind of clock sound is a little bit heavy at the moment. But what I've planned to do is have the clock kind of starting it and the clock kind of finishing it, right? So you'd get Oh my god, I'm an embarrassment. Wow. I need to compose myself. What I plan to do is have the clock starting and the clock finishing so that it should loop nicely. And rather than just do straight repeats of everything, which is the kind of temptation, you get a loop working, you think, okay, cool. You build all your layers into that loop and then you just take them off, put them in, take them off, put them in. I thought I'd try and kind of keep the brain interested. I mean, after a while, yeah, you hope the players don't really notice it, a bit like movie making soundtracks. There are times where you want the music to be a part of the whole thing and you want people to hear it, and there's times where you want the music to bolster what's actually happening on screen, for example. And I figure I'm approaching this in the same kind of way, right? So I don't really want to detract from the players' enjoyment of what they're doing, from the DM's control of what's going on. I want to complement it, but at the same token, I want to keep people interested and drop them into that kind of atmosphere. So what I've done is just slightly, changed up a few little things. They're not quite always sat, almost. I haven't done it paint by numbers kind of style. I've just put a tiny amount of variation in here and there, so that in theory it should keep the brain kind of interested. And you can see here, right, this would be the natural kind of end to 3 lots of this. So by putting this added little bit on the end, that'll kick it off each time. It won't be quite the same. I hope that made sense. Might have done, might not have done. Okay, so this is where the bass cuts in. Long, drawn out, quite slow, methodical. Walking through town, being interested in a few things. That's my kind of thought process here. Okay, this rolls round. The horns kind of come in here. Horns, but... And this middle section, a light drum. Unless you push the wrong button and go back to the beginning. Ringing on that clock is great, right? So that'll roll around for that length, and then you'd have a similar, no drums, similar to sort of the beginning, but with the added violin and trumpet sound there, and then a fade out. So that goes down to being quite subtle. Which then feeds round in the loop and starts again. And as I say, that runs for say 6 minutes, so you could just have that looping away in the background. Potentially going to be interspersed with other, if a battle sequence occurs, whatever. That's up to the DMs. I kind of feel like I can't second guess all of the scenarios that are going to be created by the DMs around the world and how they're going to play out. No chance, right? Initially, I started thinking, "Oh, what if this? What if that?" It's like, I can't know that. So I can only provide. Here are the tools. You do what you want with them. Okay, let's move on to the 3 outros. I'm so tired of being ill. He says huffing on this. Idiot! This is the negative one. Same synth, same kind of setup, obviously. Haven't used any drums for this, and what I've done is I've lowered the BPM, the tempo. So the original was running at like 151. I mean, it's kind of half time of that, but it doesn't matter. It's running at 151. This I've run at 135 to give that kind of drawback, slow it down, make it a bit more mournful, sorrowful. Again, you know, I don't know what's going to have happened in order to trigger this, so I can only give them a sentence that finishes. I don't know. To create some of those kind of tension bits, I have a habit of doing two notes right next to each other. Anything that kind of jars but doesn't sound wrong is useful for upsetting the kind of brain, if you like. And I've got the same with the trumpets and the violin here. So I mean, the trumpets have already got a slight trepidation in the raspiness at the end, but you know, a single note, single note of the right instrument, solid, one either side of it, gives that kind of effect. So hopefully that'll work. Right, on to the neutral end. Outro. Neutral outro. Try saying that when you're drunk. So this is the neutral outro. Neutral outro. That's what it's called, actually. Good name for a band. Right. I've got rid of some of the stuff. So I've got rid of the clock, anvil thing, whatever you want to call it. I've got rid of the horns and the trumpets. And I've just gone with these four. Predominantly my reason behind this was that my computer just decided to kind of collapse a little bit, and as you know, my audio performance meter likes to just blow up anyway, which it was. So I'm trying to keep this neutral. I've just had a little listen back, and it could be it could be deemed as being a little bit negative, but anyway, you be the judge. So again, not mixed, as I've mentioned several times before. You'll notice with a lot of musicians and composers, we make a lot of excuses as to why it doesn't sound as good as it should. But there you go. So yeah, not mixed. I feel that's okay. I may come and revisit it, but to be honest, at this stage, I don't want to be too precious because the guys haven't tested any of these. They may come back, yeah, it's great, brilliant, works. Whereas I'm sitting there going, does it, doesn't it? Time is a little bit of the essence, and you've got that awkward balance of quantity and quality that you need to produce at the same time, which is very difficult. So anyway, I'm going to leave it for now, send it over, give it a test. So the last outro I want to show you is the positive outro. Something I've just realised is that just in case I'm going to want to come back to these and make any changes and adjustments, I probably would have preferred that I hadn't removed the synths that I got rid of on the previous one. I just leave them there, and what I've done is just suspended. So if you hold down the Alt key, or this button up here, I believe, you can completely suspend any of the effects or plugins that you've put on a channel. And so actually, although the synths themselves are using up some of my processing power, the plugins also are using processing power. So actually, if you can, get rid of those plugins, you can get yourself back a little bit more power. Another thing that you can do is freeze an instrument. So on the VST instruments, see I've got all my instruments here, you can actually click these and freeze them, which effectively disables the instrument, giving you a bit more space. Or you can render in place the audio, the MIDI down to audio, and then freeze the track. There's lots of ways that you can make up space without actually having to move away from this particular track. Another approach that I use is bouncing everything down to audio, bringing it into a separate track to do the mixing, which is probably what I will do with most of these, because that frees up as much processing power as I can get, which I will need because I do a lot of mixing. I stick a lot of stuff on because I'm not very good. There you go, polish that turd. Alright, so this is the outro, the positive outro. What I've tried to do again is make sure that all the ends are faded out nicely. The beginnings are kind of, nice and clean, because when you output these eventually, you're going to want to make sure that the whole piece of audio, the whole waveform is nice and clean and ready to go. So yes, no mixing as yet. I may do another video about mixing them, but I've got other videos about mixing, so I may not. Also, I've got a lot to get done, so we'll see. But there you go. So that's just a little walkthrough of how I'm going to put my kind of packs together. As I mentioned earlier, I may add a battle sequence or a fight sequence into those styles, as well as one of the kind of standard things. But for now, that's what I'm going to work with. Send it back to the guys once I've mixed them, and then see how they actually play out in real world scenarios. So thanks for watching. Appreciate it. And now I'm going.